yata nishayam udupe panashte. Very poetic. Just as on a moonless night, people are merged into darkness and cannot find their way. Now that I've lost sight of your lotus feet, my Lord, I have lost my vision and am wandering blindly in darkness. I cannot tell my direction, nor can I find any peace. Submerged in the darkness of Kali Yuga, a situation in which human beings today think they have the answers, think they know what is progress, think they know what is happiness. We may wonder, what is the solution to cut through our complacency, our lethargy, our ignorance, our stubbornness, our lust, anger, greed, madness, envy, and illusion? It seems indeed like everything is going against us in terms of living an auspicious life, moving forward with our spiritual development. And you're correct to think that way, except for the reality that Srimad Bhagavatam is present. A moonless night, you can't find your way. And as Daruka says, I've lost sight, my Lord, of your lotus feet. I've lost my vision. I'm wandering blindly in darkness. I can't tell my direction, and I can't find any peace. What can Srimad Bhagavatam do for us as individuals? Can it be that just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam with concentrated attention, hearing, reading, saying, can it be that all the troublesome things in my heart will be resolved? Every devotee needs to have this experience of being rescued from dense darkness simply by the light of Srimad Bhagavatam. For such a moving expression of personal indebtedness to Srimad Bhagavatam, let's hear from Sanatana Goswami in his text, Krishna Lila Stava, a section of that work called Srimad Bhagavata Mahima Stotram. 5 verses or so, which so powerfully describe the dependency of the bhakta on Srimad Bhagavatam in a most personal relationship. We're not dealing with some metaphysical text. We're not dealing with some compendium of religious doctrine. We are dealing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead present in his literary form. And that's something that every devotee has to realize for himself, for herself. Otherwise, you can mouth the words and you'll benefit, certainly. Yes, Srimad Bhagavatam, Amala Purana. Yes, yes. The literary incarnation of Godhead. Yes, yes. But we all need the experience. We want to move in the direction that Sanatana Goswami presents. Because bhakti is all about relationships. Relationships with the Shastra, relationships with the Mahamantra, relationships with the spiritual master, relationships with the deity, relationships with the association of devotees, and also relationships with those abhaktas, those who are non-devotees. Our relationships with them are always geared toward how to engage them in devotional service. If not today, then tomorrow. So please listen as Sanatana Goswami praises the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadhya, Sarva Lokaika Drikpada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Is that an exaggeration or just some kind of enthusiastic talk? You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. This is something we want to strive to realize as we make advancement. By serving the book Bhagavata and the person Bhagavata, we are able to see past religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and even past liberation from material existence. You are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kali Dvanto Dita Ditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life heir of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Our aim in life is to experience, to realize that Srimad Bhagavatam is the exact image of Sri Krishna. It's not just a religious book. It's the presence of Krishna, just as the Maha Mantra is. When we gain experience of these transcendental realities, then we can effectively reach out to others. Sanatana Goswami goes on in such a personal way. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varsyat Sharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. So personal. Such a prayer of dependency on Srimad Bhagavatam. Mareka Bando Mat Sangin, Mad Guru Man Mahadana, Man Nista Rakamad Bhagya, Marananda Namos Dute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy. I bow down to you. A sadhu, sadhuta, dayin, ti nichoch chata kara. Ana muncha karachin mam, premna hrit hantayo spura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. So deeply, intensely personal is this glorification by Sanatana Goswami for Srimad Bhagavatam. No trace of being theoretical, no trace of just expounding religious doctrine. He's showing you what real life is all about. Please never leave me. You would think that he's speaking to a dearmost companion, and he is, but you would think, well, he must be talking about another human being. No, he's talking about his dearmost companion, Krishna, in his direct form as Srimad Bhagavatam. So please let his words sink into your consciousness. We want to revisit, because I know so many of you have read it. We'll revisit the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The question is, what's happening now that Krishna is no longer manifest to the ordinary vision of the world? These sages at Naimisaranya have asked Sutta Goswami 6 questions in chapter 1. By studying these 6 questions, you see the whole Bhagavatam starting to assemble and move forward. And these 6 questions are so essential for any truly progressive human being. So, what were those 6 questions? Some of them you may not easily detect. I think those of you who have studied Bhakti Shastri have learned to pick them out. They are there. First of all, they ask, what is most beneficial for humanity? What ordinary person today knows the answer to that question? What is most beneficial for all humanity? Well, money, satisfaction of my senses, social respectability, prestige. That's as far as it gets for most people. Do good for others, whatever that is. Do good. Amidst such shallow thinking or lack of thinking, you have the light of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's dealing with the issue. Yenatma supersedity. How can the self actually be satisfied? We were explaining on Sunday, based on the teachings of Lord Vamanadev in his dialogue with Bali Maharaj. Lord Vamanadev points out that, yes, you can have your ambitions for material development. And you may even attain what you're after, what you're going after. But that doesn't mean you'll be content and satisfied. So this is the materialistic game. You're free to have delusions. You're free to try to fulfill your material ambitions. Let me attain this. Let me get that. Let me acquire this. You may actually get those things, whatever you want. But satisfaction and contentment is something else. So I spoke briefly on Sunday, for those who weren't there, about the example of birds on a tree. The Upanishadic example is very famous. It's quoted in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Dwa Suparna Sakaya. Dwa Suparna Sayuja Sakaya. There are two birds on the tree of the body. One is the eating bird, the other is the witnessing bird. In other words, one is the Jivatma, living entity, trying to enjoy the fruits on the tree. And the other bird is the Paramatma, the super soul, observing and watching. That's the Vedic version of the example of two birds on the tree. But those of you who are listening on Sunday may remember the Kali Yuga equivalent of the example. Two birds on the tree. One bird is named more, and the other bird's named better. And those birds are always together. If you've got more, you've got better. I was recalling hearing His Holiness Bhakti Chaitanya Maharaj relay in his class last week about someone who was at his time the richest person in the world, multi-billionaire. And so he was asked, can you explain your vision of life? Can you explain your philosophy of living? And he said, sure. It all boils down to one word: more. Why? Because more means better. Those two birds are always together. But we explained on Sunday that many contemporary social thinkers are having doubts, severe doubts, so much so that they say, okay, about those two birds on the tree, more and better, it seems the bird known as better has flown off. You may have more, but that doesn't mean you have better. So it's very important what the sages at Naimishranya are asking Sutta Goswami. What is most beneficial for the self? And then you have to know, what is that real self? In the chapter about Lord Vamanadev, dialoguing with Bali Maharaj before Vamanadev takes his steps, Prabhupada gives a very astounding purport about senses and super senses. We'll never attain satisfaction by just gratifying the senses. We need to consider the super senses. The soul has senses, and bhakti is meant for those spiritual senses, super senses. So Srila Prabhupada brilliantly made this distinction. Senses, you're struggling with your senses for satisfaction, but they're external. And then super senses, the senses of your real self. You can only be satisfied in that way by doing what satisfies the super senses. So this is a very appropriate tool, this example, for freeing yourself from unnecessary material endeavors. What about my super senses? So the sages at Naimisranya are concerned. Please, they say to Sutta Goswami, explain what is most beneficial for satisfying humanity as an individual and as a collective species. And then they point out there are so many shastras, so many scriptures in the Vedic tent. Can you please select the essence? Otherwise, this shastra says this, the other shastra says that. Can you select what is actually the key for satisfying the self? Select amongst all the recommendations in the shastras. The third question, we'd like to know the purpose of Krishna's appearing from Devaki in Mathura. We'd like to know why. Furthermore, can you describe the pastimes of Krishna? Krishna has all the avatars within him. Can you talk about him? And number 5, let's hear about the Leela avatars, the pastime incarnations of Godhead. And then we get to number 6. Krishna has departed. Where is the shelter of Dharma now? This is, you might say, the most dramatic question. The Krishna sun has set, apparently. It's a verse in the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam. Krishna Jumani Nimloche. Krishna's sun has set, and the world's plunged into darkness. So you really feel that situation as you read Bhagavatam. And naturally, your heart is longing for a solution. The famous query, Bruhi Yogeshvare Krishna Brahmanye Dharma Varmani. Swam Kashtam Adunopete Dharma Kam Sharanam Gataha. Since Sri Krishna, the absolute truth, the master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us to whom the religious principles have now gone for shelter. These sages understand that without real Dharma, there's no hope for humanity. What will take the place of Krishna's presence? It seems that one sun, sun, has gone. What is the sun that will light the sky in replacement? So, in this way, we should consider or reconsider our relationship to Srimad Bhagavatam, because we want concentrated reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. The deeper our service attitude is, the more we'll be able to penetrate into Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to stimulate our attraction for Krishna and eventually revive our dormant love for Krishna. So we have to give it a chance to, shall we say, work its show, to do its thing. We've got to allow Bhagavatam to enter the core of our heart and work its miracle. One thing we want to guard against is the concoction, the mental concoction that I've read all this before, especially first canto. I know first canto. Yeah, 5 years ago, I studied Bhakti Shastri. We want to guard against that attitude because, as Sanatana Goswami points out in his prayers, his glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam, every syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam is saturated with Krishna prema. We aspire to see that in every syllable. Every syllable is ever fresh. It's very important that we approach Srimad Bhagavatam with the right attitude, just as it's important how we approach the holy name, how we approach the deity, how we approach the spiritual master, and how we approach the Vaishnavas. All these approaches are crucially important. So when we feel that, oh, I've heard this before, or where's some new nectar? We should catch ourselves and realize that such a mentality is the product of our material contamination. Our goal is to approach the kind of dependency that Sanatana Goswami expresses. He's not only leaning on Srimad Bhagavatam as his life support, he's clinging, he's holding tight. We aspire for just a drop of that ocean of reality. As we look at the world situation today, pandemic, economic turbulence, political commotion, environmental destruction, you might wonder, how can Srimad Bhagavatam make a difference? It's a very mystical book, we would all agree. It can be so otherworldly, although Srila Prabhupada's purports bring the Bhagavatam right into your head and your heart and your home. So you may wonder, how will the mass distribution of sets of Srimad Bhagavatam make a difference? First of all, we endeavor in this way because it's the order of the parampara. Secondly, we take seriously what we read in Srimad Bhagavatam. The masses of people don't know the linking process of devotional service, how by linking with Krishna, and that connection is accomplished by Srimad Bhagavatam. By linking with Krishna, all the problems of life can be solved on an individual level and on a societal level. Srila Prabhupada had no doubt that the mass distribution of Srimad Bhagavatam would produce a change in society. We may not know the exact timetable for which that change will happen. I was just listening in my daily hearing of Srila Prabhupada's walks and lectures. I was listening to something from March 1976 in Mayapur. And one disciple on the walk with Srila Prabhupada asked him, Prabhupada, practically all your disciples right now are Westerners from America, Europe. There are very few Indians. This is 1976. Prabhupada's response was very quiet and gentle. He said, that is temporary. And he gave a beautiful example. There's a rain cloud in the sky, but the rain hasn't come down yet, but still the cloud's in the sky. Beautiful example. So Prabhupada could see the vast effects of spreading Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you only knew of his determination that Srimad Bhagavatam would be published and distributed. I remember one example from the airport in Atlanta, the most busy airport in the USA. And during the time when devotees were legally allowed to distribute books in such public places as airports, you would find lined up across the whole span of the huge airlines terminal 15 book distributors. As thousands of people were going here and there to their flights, there's this long line of book distributors spread out across the whole floor of the terminal. 15 devotees stopping people, presenting Srimad Bhagavatam. I remember because salesmen, business people, they travel all the time by plane, selling whatever they are selling. And so often they would stop and just watch because they're salespersons. They know about sales and what people buy and how to motivate people to buy. So they would just stop and just they would often come up to the devotee book distributors and say, in all my 30 years of sales, I've never seen anything like this before. What's going on here? They couldn't believe it. A solid line of book distributors stretched out across the floor, just stopping one person after another, presenting books that people couldn't even pronounce what the title. And people were buying. So these salesmen, these traveling business people were just watching. Often they would come up to the book distributors and take my business card. I think we could hire you. We need people like you. In other words, what are you doing wasting your life selling these exotic books? You could be selling cars. You could be selling this, that, the other. Come, contact me, for an interview. They were just shocked. They were seeing Prabhupada's potency. And Prabhupada's potency is all about complete dedication to Srimad Bhagavatam, knowing that Bhagavatam distribution will change the face of the world. So I'm very happy to hear how more and more sets are being distributed. So enlivening. I was explaining Sunday, and I'll repeat it because this is a talk that I think most of you didn't hear. It was a talk geared toward the international book distribution team. And so I was giving some history briefly about set distribution. Srila Prabhupada was often pointing out that it's very nice that Bhagavad Gita is being distributed, individual volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam are being distributed, but what about sets? Every gentleman, every lady should have a full set of Bhagavatams in the home. And so devotees would hear that, but they thought it was impossible. We were so happy. People are taking one book, people are taking 2 books, 3 Bhagavad Gita, Krishna book, Srimad Bhagavatam Volume 1. Oh, wow. But Prabhupada always wanted more. So he would say, what about sets? Why can't people buy full sets of Bhagavatam? And his disciples, of course, we didn't say it, but many of us thought, ooh, I don't know. It reminds me of the first time books, just a single book, started to be distributed. One devotee went to a little grocery store, and on his way, as he went there, he happened to take a Krishna book with him. And then he just stopped someone and said, take a look at this. Would you like to buy one? And the person bought the book. That's how book distribution started. The news went from temple to temple like wildfire. Someone sold a book on his way to the grocery store. Someone bought the book. Otherwise, what was happening was that Prabhupada printed. He arranged for printing Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, Krishna book, and these books were just sitting in the basements of temples. Devotees didn't know what to do with them. But Prabhupada insisted, take these books. So temples would just have these boxes of books, and they were sitting there, and no one had any idea what's going to happen to them, until this one devotee just decided on his way to the grocery store, I'll take a book with me, and hey, I'll present it to someone. They bought it. Oh my gosh. Bought one book. That was the start of the huge book distribution flood. So similarly about sets. At that time, people would have encyclopedias in their home. If you had kids, you had to have a set of encyclopedias. My home had at least 4 different sets of encyclopedias that made the parents feel they were doing their duty, having the knowledge there so their children could all be academically successful. These sets in the home were distributed by door-to-door salespersons. They would knock on your door, ring your bell, and very expertly enter into your home and sit down and show you the full set and why you needed a full set. Your children need this. Think of their future. And they're just monthly payments. Don't be afraid. So Prabhupada knew about that because remember, Prabhupada's first year in New York, he was all alone. But he said, I would go out into the city and study the Americans, those strange creatures. So he knew about sets of encyclopedias and how they were being distributed. So he kept saying that to devotees, leading devotees. What about selling full sets? I've seen it happen. And devotees would, um, um. So two leading devotees actually made a study because Prabhupada kept bringing the point up. They studied what professional encyclopedia salesmen would do. They would get leads, names, and then these professionals would follow up the leads, call up someone, visit their home. So these devotees tried that, but it wasn't working. And so they went back and reported to Srila Prabhupada. We've investigated all the methods of encyclopedia salespersons. We've tried this, we've tried that. For us, for Srimad Bhagavatam, it is not possible. So Srila Prabhupada acknowledged their efforts graciously. So you've thoroughly explored the situation, you've thoroughly analyzed the situation, and you've concluded that it's not possible. All right. But I still think it's possible. And so now, what was thought to be impossible back in the 70s, now we are seeing more and more it's possible. Even we hear reports of devotees selling sets on the street in what's called a cold sale. The person had no prior intent to buy the product, and no prior relationship, but they take a whole set of Srimad Bhagavatams, put them in the boot of their car, or come back and pick them up later. It's gradually starting to happen more and more. So these are the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Let us remember, we're all about books are the basis. And the more we can increase our distribution of sets of Srimad Bhagavatam, the more this unfortunate world will find light in the darkness, both as individuals and collectively as a society. So let's put our mind to work. I see some of you from Auckland, some of you from Wellington, some from Canberra, so many others from so many places. Think about it. How we can make this ultimate solution of arranging that sets of Srimad Bhagavatam go everywhere. In everyone's home, in every library, in every public facility. Let's think bigger. And that way we can get some credit from Krishna and Krishna's representatives. So I thank you very much for your kind attention. Please remember Sanatana Goswami's wonderful glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam and his relationship to Srimad Bhagavatam. Let's acknowledge the darkness of the present day and age, but at the same time acknowledging the light of Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for your encouraging words. I'm sure it was enlightenment to everyone. Thank you so much once again. Is there any questions that devotees would like to ask? You're most welcome.
Just one or two. All right, so they're letting me off the hook.
So Maharaj,
Hare Krishna.
we'll be seeing you. We will be seeing you on Sunday, Maharaj.
All right, I look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj ji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Question.
Hare Krishna. Now we're in Singapore. Radhe, who's singing in Singapore? Radhe, you there?
Yes, Prabhuji, आप sing करेंगे नशा
Who is sing?
sing नशा प्रिया. Prabhu. Hare Krishna. आप
Namaste Narasimhaya Praladalada Hiranyakashi Purvasha Latanka